Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that exercise and that you were able to find a little bit of insight into the root causes of the problems you're experiencing at work. Chances are that root cause falls into one of these 5 categories. Let's keep working with the example of I'm not happy at my job. And the root cause is that you're lacking community. That community, that sense of community, falls into the category of love and belonging. Now, I didn't develop this. This was actually developed by Abraham Maslow, and he's most well known for this hierarchy of needs. Even though he was in his prime time in the mid 1900s, this is still very true today. Check it out. Psychological, safety, love and belongingness, esteem, and self-actualization needs are the 5 areas that are directly connected to our sense of purpose and fulfillment. Chances are one of your problems has a root cause that is lacking in one of these areas. Now that we've identified the root of your problem, we can connect it to what's holding you back. What I like to call the invisible wall. The invisible wall is a core belief that you developed in your childhood as a result of a traumatic event. And now you're taking this limiting belief with you throughout your life, and it's shaping your reality as an adult. That core belief usually shows up in our self-talk, our inner dialogue. Let's take a look at how that might look. So, you say to yourself, I don't have a community at work. That means if I don't have a community, then that means I'm alone. And if I'm alone, that means I'm not good enough. That's your limiting belief. I'm not good enough. Have you ever said that to yourself? Does that show up in other parts of your life, your relationships, previous jobs? Now we're starting to connect the dots. If you say you're not happy at work, it's because you don't have a community. If you don't have a community, that means you're not good enough. Well, that's why you're not feeling fulfilled at your job, is because your job makes you feel like you're not good enough. Your beliefs really do create your reality. If you have this limiting belief that you're not good enough, then you're going to be thinking about all the reasons and all the ways that you're not good enough. And then you're going to go out into the world and start looking for evidence to prove that you are not good enough. You're going to be looking for evidence in your relationships, in your friendships, with your family that support the belief that you're not good enough. Luckily, there's something we can do about it. And in this next exercise, I'm going to show you how we can reframe that core belief from something that is holding you back to something that can work in your favor. This is one of my favorite exercises. You're going to be challenged to stretch your mind in ways that you've never done before. In this exercise, we're going to take your core belief and associate it with a traumatic event from your childhood. In that event that we're going to call the situation, we're going to separate the facts from the story. Now, take out the worksheet that you printed out. You can find the download button right below, and you'll see that there's 2 sections. You have one section with a circle, and you have the lower section with 2 circles. The first circle is represented by the situation. So let's continue with our example of not having community. Let's say you were a kid, maybe in 5th grade. You moved around a lot in your childhood, and at this point you had to switch schools. Now, before, you had a really great friend group, You felt like you belonged, you got along with everyone. So switching to a new school is a little bit scary. You're wondering, you're nervous, am I going to find another group, a community to be a part of? So it's your first day of school and you're on the playground. You see a group of kids having fun and you walk over and you ask to join. The kid closest to you looks at you and says, "No. No, you can't join. We have enough." You're shocked. You're speechless. You look around. Maybe you feel a little bit embarrassed. And you go through the playground and you see other groups of kids playing. They all seem like they know each other. They're having a good time. But now you have this doubt inside of you. Like, do they want me? Can I be a part of that group? And instead of trying again, you decide to go off to the side and sit alone. And now that doubt has turned into this belief that you're not good enough to be a part of their group, especially a group of people that already know each other. Can you imagine that scenario happening? I think it's pretty realistic. It might have happened to you. You might know someone where at a young age they got some rejection and they really took it to heart. They took it personally and carried that with them through the rest of their life. In that moment, as a child, you decided that you're not good enough to be a part of a group. And that starts to snowball through your life. And that looks like when you get older, anytime that you get put into a new environment with unfamiliar people, instead of putting yourself out there, you decide to be a little bit reserved and just hold yourself back from connecting because of that fear of rejection, because you don't want to feel like you're not good enough. And that continues, that theme continues to recur through your life, in your jobs, in your relationships, where you're reserved because you don't want to get hurt. You don't want to feel like you're not good enough, even though the whole time that little kid inside of you is missing being a part of a group. It's missing that sense of community, and you feel like you're not good enough. Now that we've identified the source of your limiting core belief, this traumatic event from your childhood, we're going to dissect it and we're going to separate it into the facts and the story. So, with this example, let's list the facts. The facts are you were a kid, you switched schools, a new environment, you tried to make friends, and the first kid who you asked said no. And then you decided to sit by yourself. That's it. Those are the facts. No emotions, no story. Let's take a look at the story or the meaning that was created in that moment. The story that you told yourself in that situation is that because that one kid said no, that means that every kid might say no. And because you weren't welcome into that group in that one moment, in that one place, then maybe you won't be welcome in any group, in any moment, in any environment. And because you weren't welcome in a group, that meant that you weren't good enough. So, can you start to see the difference between the facts and the story? On one hand, we have the hard facts. They're not debatable. And on the other hand, we have this meaning that is created from that situation. The meaning that you created is that any group of people is not going to welcome you. And if you're not welcome, then that means that you're not good enough. Well, I invite you to consider, what if that's only one possible story? What if we can create a new story with the same foundation, the same facts? We can create a new story with new meaning. What if in that moment, as a kid, after the first person said no, instead of giving up, what if you went to the next group and those kids said yes? How would that have changed your life? Even though we can't go back in time and change what you did as a kid, we can change the story that you tell about that situation. So, if we were to recreate this story, let's go back to the facts, right? You switched schools, you found a new group of kids, and the first person you asked if you could hang out said no. At that point, you decided that there was no group of people to hang out with. What if we changed that story to you saying that if one group of people says no, then that means there might be a different group of people somewhere else? Or just because one person doesn't want me to be included, that doesn't mean that there aren't other people who might appreciate me. Or just because there's one person who doesn't like me doesn't mean that I'm not good enough for everyone. There's usually a few events that happen throughout our childhood. Typically that happen before the age of 18. So at this point, I want you to just focus on one that can be related to your core belief that we identified. All right, now let's try it with your situation. On your worksheet, I want you to take that first circle and right next to it, your situation, the traumatic event that happened in your life that resulted in your core belief that's holding you back. Next, right below, you'll see two circles. On the left, try to write down the facts. Write down the facts of that situation without any emotion, without any meaning, just the sequence of events. And in the second circle on the right, I want you to write down the meaning that was created, that arose from that situation, what that meant to you. And that's usually going to be related to your core limiting belief. See, this happens very naturally and very quickly in our minds throughout our life. A traumatic event happens and a story arises, and we create meaning, and we allow that story to repeat itself through our life, and that meaning then colors everything else that happens in our life. Now that we've identified the facts and the story, and we've been able to separate them, we have power to change the story, to change the narrative. We can now rewrite the story to take the form of something that empowers us, something that works in our favor instead of holding us back. With this example of community, the old core belief is if I don't have community, that means I'm not good enough. Our new belief could sound something like, if I don't have community here, that means that there might be another group of people somewhere else. With that new belief, this creates opportunity, maybe a little bit of excitement. Instead of being shut down the first time you don't fit into a group, if you realize that this group of people isn't meant for you, but there is another group of people that you're going to fit into, who are going to appreciate your talents and your skills and your personality. all you have to do is find them. You can go look in other parts of your job and other parts of your life, different areas. This is what we're going to talk about next. So good work, and let's go on to the next lesson.